Today, I'm actually in this session, it's only me because you're not online. I'm having a recording session today due to some unavoidable situation that I'm unable to conduct the class online today at 3:30. So I thought of having a recorded session. Only thing, I wanted to do some exercises last week, but still it's not a problem. Even though we are online conducting the class on a recording basis, still we are able to conduct our exercise, and I hope you will basically do your exercise with me. Then only you will get some understanding on the things I discuss. Now up to last week we were talking about financial markets, and we linked some of the financial market instruments into the discussion. And later on I'll be having a complete separate session on financial market instruments. So before that, we are basically looking into the the markets that we are uh, trading these financial instruments. So we discuss many types of markets last week. If I remember correctly, I started discussing the foreign exchange markets, and I hope we had a lengthy discussion. I hope you can remember. Especially, we talk about the exchange rate quotations, direct and indirect quotations, and also nominal and real exchange rates, and also nominal and effective exchange rates. We talk about these things. Then I move to this slide. I hope you remember. I talk about certain foreign exchange regimes that the countries are operating for their exchange rate determination. And also, I looked at changes in exchange rate in terms of appreciation and depreciation, change in the value of the exchange rate. That also we discussed last week. And then we also looked at certain type of transactions in the financial foreign exchange market. We looked at spot market, term market, the cash markets, where the settlement of the foreign exchange transaction will complete in certain time periods. That is the basic determination or basic concept behind these different types of exchange trades, spot, term, and cash. And also we looked at forward uh, transactions, the definition of forward transaction. So from that point onwards, we are moving to forward exchange rates and forward premium. And as you are aware, in this slide, I don't have any notes given. That's up to you to get notes on these sections. But since we are having a recorded session today, I also thought of giving some support in terms of defining these foreign exchange forward market and forward premium and all that. So let's say let's take that discussion here. So I'm skipping or moving to a separate slide set. I'm only having very few slides. I hope you have this online, have in your LMS system. So get a copy of this. So you basically have to look at these slides because I'm discussing this last part in a separate slide set. So all in all, there we discuss the foreign exchange market, the forward exchange rate. Forward transactions, I think we are already aware. The forward is a contract to deliver the currency at a future date. And at the future date, the exchange rate agreed today at the time of entering the contract, that is the today's exchange rate, will be applicable. So in a forward contract, you settle the transactions in future, maybe 1 week, 1 month, or 3 months. So those are the most common forex forward trades, and you can have even 1 year, 6 months. That is also possible. But what we really observe in the foreign exchange market the traders or the dealers, they don't take that longer positions. I mean, if you are taking a very longer position, you are having a significant risk. So in most of the cases, what we observe, up to 3 months, the market is very active. There could be some or sporadic transactions, some ad hoc transactions in the long end. But simply what we are talking here is the delivery of uh, the transaction or the settlement of the transaction in the future. So in such cases, you have to have a exchange rate applied for your forward contract. So the exchange rate agreed in the forward contract, you refer it to as the forward exchange rate. Forward exchange rate. What you use for the future transactions or the forward transaction, you consider it as a forward exchange rate. So that is used in the forward contract. So depending on the movements of the exchange rates, when you enter into a forward contract, you might be incurring profits or losses, right? That is applicable for any financial transactions. Even though you have entered into a certain contract, there's no guarantee that you will exactly or definitely get profits. There could be losses. So that possibility is there because we are in the financial market, which is a very risky market. So there could be profits or losses. These profits and losses of the forward contract will be dependent on the difference between the forward rate and the spot rate prevailing in the forward contract maturity date. Now let's say we are entering into a 3-month forward contract today. So the rate will be determined today. The 3-month forward exchange rate will be determined today. So the profit would be, or the loss would be, in 3 months time, our contract matures. On the maturity date, we have an agreed exchange rate, that is the forward rate. And on the maturity date, there will be an actual rate in the market, the spot rate available in the market in 3 months time. So difference between the agreed rate today, the forward exchange rate, and the spot rate that you observe on the future that date will be the profit or the loss of a forward contract. So you are entering into a contract today because you want to mitigate the risk. Why do you need to mitigate the risk? Exchange rates are volatile. It could go either way. Exchange rate could appreciate or depreciate in the future. Through such depreciation or appreciation, you might incur profits or losses. So you want to minimize it based on the exchange movements. So if you don't agree an exchange rate for today, in the future, the rates might be different. If you are an exporter or an importer, you might be facing certain risk in the future. So to mitigate such risk, you enter into a forward contract. Now this forward contracts is important because, as I said, the market risk, one of market risk. Now under market risk, I hope you remember there are various types of market risk: interest rate risk, asset price rate risk, uh, and exchange rate risk. So exchange rate risk is coming or arising due to changes in the exchange rate in the future. To mitigate the impact of the exchange rates, you can simply uh, enter into a forward exchange contract. Now, let me give an example for you to understand the profits and losses arising from a forward contract. Now, let's say we have an exporter, right? That exporter is making a shipment to an importer abroad, and his export proceeds would be 10 million US dollars. We have an exporter here. he does a shipment. Let's say you are sending, now you are becoming self-sufficient of turmeric, and you export turmeric, let's say to China, right? Earlier we were mainly importing from China and India. Now we are sending turmeric to them. So let's say our shipment is basically around US dollars 10 million worth of turmeric, and that is due on 90th day from the date of the shipment. So which means you will receive funds uh, on the 90th day from the shipment, which means basically a 3-month deal transaction. So he expect the exporter, sorry, the local currency exchange rate, or the local currency exchange rate, which means let's say LKR rupee rate, to appreciate by around 2 rupees by the time of receiving export proceeds. Now let's say he assumes now today the exchange rate is, let's say, somewhere around 150. So he thinks in the future the exchange rate is going to appreciate. So when the exchange rate appreciates, what will happen? The rupee proceeds that he will receive will be less. Okay. Now he wants to reduce that risk, the rupee conversion risk. The amount of money he would get will be lesser due to appreciation, and he wants to reduce it. So therefore, the exporter now arranging a forward contract for 3 months. So what is the forward contract? In 3 months time, he will sell his US dollars 10 million to a dealer, foreign exchange dealer, at the exchange rate of 150 per US dollar. And current spot rate, as I said, it's 150. Okay. So he thinks now the exchange rate is 150. It's going to be appreciating. It's going to appreciate in the future. His expectation is such. So appreciate means it will be less than 150. So to minimize it, he enters into a forward contract. What is the forward contract? In 3 months time, he will sell his foreign exchange to a forex dealer at 151 rupees per dollar. So multiplied by that, you can calculate the multiplied 151 by 10 million USD. You can calculate his rupee proceeds. So it's going to be higher according to his contract. Now, let's say on the contract maturity date, the spot exchange rate is 149 rupees per dollar. Exchange rate has appreciated. But the exporter has an agreement to sell his proceeds at 151 rupees per dollar. So what is the profit he would get? The agreed forward exchange rate 151 minus the current spot exchange rate in 3 months time, that is 149. So the difference is the profit 2 rupees that he would earn out of his forward contract. So under forward contract, he will get 2 rupees profit into 10 million USD. So he is making a profit because of the forward contract. Now assume he has not entered into a forward contract. What will happen? He has to sell his foreign exchange at the prevailing spot rate in the future, that is $149 per rupees per dollar. So what will happen? He would make a loss if he has not entered into the contract. And also, let's say if the spot rate has increased, depreciated further to 152 per dollar, then what will happen? Exporter would have a loss due to the uh, unavailability of a sorry, I think I made a mistake. If the spot trade has increased to 152 rupees per dollar, the exporter would have exchange loss of 1 rupee, which means 152 minus 151 due to the uh, forward contract. Okay. Now, what does that mean? Entering into the forward contract will mitigate the risk, but it will not eliminate the risk. Why? He has agreed to 151. Fortunately, exchange rate became 149. So he makes a 2 rupee profit. Unfortunately, let's say exchange rate goes up to 152. So which means further depreciates, and the rupee proceeds would have been much higher if he has not entered into the contract. So now he makes a loss of 152 minus 151, 1 rupee loss. So that's the story. So all in all, entering into the forward contract will reduce or mitigate the exchange rate risk to a great extent, but it does not completely eliminate the risk. If the exchange rate goes other way around, compared to anticipation, compared to expectation, you might make losses. That is possible. Now let's come to the idea or the discussion on forward exchange rate used in these contracts. Now dealers, they quote forward exchange rates in the forward contract, considering one important element between the two currencies. So what are the two key elements used in these two currencies? The common element is the interest differential between two currencies. Now let's say we have rupees, we have dollars. Rupee has an interest rate as a currency. Dollar has an interest rate as a currency. So the interest difference between rupee interest and dollar interest, let's say in rupee, we have the local interest rate. For dollar, let's say we have US interest rate. So the difference between US and Sri Lankan interest rate is the interest differential. So that interest differential would be considered when the forward exchange rate is decided. Theoretically, in finance, you call this as the covered interest rate parity. Parity conditions means, parity means how the exchange rate becomes equalized between countries. So in this case, the forward rates becoming equalized between the countries because of the exchange rate, sorry, interest rate. So the interest rate brings the exchange rate equilibrium. That is what we call as parity. So it's covered interest rate parity is a theoretical condition where the relationship between interest rates and the spot and forward currency values of two currencies are in equilibrium. As I said, when interest rates are considered, two currencies are in equilibrium in terms of their spot and uh, forward rates, right? So you take into consideration these interest rates. So when you take interest rates into consideration, how do you define the forward exchange rate? So in this blue box, I have defined the forward exchange rate. It is also referred to as the forward rate or the forward price. We define it as the exchange rate at which the bank, or let's say the dealer agrees to exchange one currency for another currency at a future date. when it enters into a forward contract with the investor. So the forward exchange rate or the forward price is the exchange rate that you agree to exchange one currency with another currency on a future date when you are entering into the contract today. So this forward contract contains the forward exchange rate, and that forward exchange rate is considered as an unbiased predictor of the future spot rate when the market is reasonably efficient. Unbiased predictor of the future spot rate. So what you agree today is considered as a predictor for the future spot rate. Why? You are taking the interest rates into consideration. Based on the interest rate, you are deriving a exchange rate. So that exchange rate, what you expect to be in the future in 3 months time, for example. So in future, that date, that will be the spot rate. Okay. So that is possible to consider as an unbiased predictor when the market is efficient, reasonably efficient. Reasonably efficient means there are no arbitrage profits in the foreign exchange market. There are no arbitrage profits in the foreign exchange market. Arbitrage means you buy in one market and sell in another market. You buy low in this market, selling high in the other market. That is arbitrage. So you can't do arbitrage when the spot rate is basically predicted by the forward rate. Since you are taking the interest rate differentials, the interest rate is basically the cost of money. What would be the future value of your money based on today's value, today's amount? What would be the future value? So that is taken care of by the interest rate differential. So since you are making or considering interest rate differentials between the two currencies, you are basically having an equalization of the two currencies. So as a result, you can simply predict the rate that would be in the market in the 3 months time if the market is reasonably efficient. So that's why you call it an unbiased or unbiased predictor of the future spot rate. So let's calculate the forward exchange rate now. Now forward exchange rate calculation is important because in your paper we observe some of the calculations related to the forward rates. Okay. So how do you calculate the forward rate? Forward rate can be calculated from the spot rates. You have the spot rate today, no? Spot USD dollar exchange, USD rupee exchange rate. And also you use the interest rates between the two currencies. The domestic interest rate, the foreign interest rate. The domestic rate means what is your currencies expressed. Let's say you are in Sri Lanka, your currency is rupee. So the rupee interest rate is the domestic interest rate. You are exchanging with USD, so that is your foreign exchange. So your foreign interest rate would be the US interest rate. So you consider the domestic interest rate and the foreign interest rate in the in calculating the forward rate. So in this highlighted part, I have the forward rate given calculation. So F means the forward rate, S means the spot rate, which means the current prevailing rate, multiplied by 1 plus RD. RD means the domestic currency interest rate, RD. RF is the foreign currency interest rate. This is the annualized formula. Spot into 1 plus RD, 1 plus RF divided by 1 plus RF. So this is basically relative interest rate between two countries. And I told you this is annualized formula. So let's say you have 3 months, 1 month, etc., etc. Then you have to consider that part in this formula by adding another fraction depending on the time convention. Let's say you have 3 months, then you have to take n divided by 360, right? So let's say you have n means basically 4. You have monthly, n divided by 360, n means basically 30, 1 month. Likewise, you take the time convention into this formula when you basically calculate the forward rate. Okay. Now let's move into a calculation. Right? Now, without moving the slide, let's say I'll give you the example. So then let's try to calculate it. Okay. So even though this is a recorded session, let's say you try to do this based on this formula. Okay. Let's say we have two currencies. Two currencies are Canadian dollar and the US dollar. Canadian dollar and the US dollar. So let's say Canadian dollar is the home currency, the domestic currency. US dollar is the foreign currency. Okay, you are in Canada basically. So Canadian USD exchange rate would be 1.1239. 1.1239, which means you have to pay 1.1239 Canadian dollars to buy a US dollar. Okay. Now let's say the interest rates are Canadian dollar interest rate is 0.75. They have low interest. RD equals 0.75. US dollar, which means the foreign interest rate, 0.4. USD, which means RF, 0.4. For US, RD, which means the Canadian interest rate is 0.75. Now the question is, calculate 3-month Canadian dollar USD exchange rate. So which means calculate Canadian dollar USD forward rate in 3 months. Okay. Shall we give a try? Let's take a couple of minutes and let's try to plug numbers at least to this formula. Shall we try? I'm not so sure whether you get an answer. I can't check it, but let's try to do it gradually. Right? Now, if the spot rate for Canadian dollar USD is 1.1239 and the 3-month interest rate on Canadian dollar and USD are 0.75 and 0.4 annually, then calculate the 3-month Canadian dollar USD forward rate. So we know the forward rate equals the spot rate into interest relative, and if you have time factor less than 1 year, you have to consider that part as well. So here 1.129 is the spot rate multiplied by 1 plus 0.75 means RD, 1 plus 0.4 means RF. RF means foreign interest rate. Now I hope you understand how to incorporate numbers when you have percent here, right? You can't simply put 0.75, but you have to make it decimals, 0.0075. Likewise here 0.004. So sorry, yeah, you have to make it decimals. and multiplied by the time factor, which means here 3 months. 3 months means 90 divided by 360. So which means the time factor is 1/4, 0.25, right? If you divide this part, you can make it 360 divided by 90, right? Whatever you take, it has to be consistent. So if you solve this formula, what you will get? 1.1249. So in the future, in 3 months time, your Canadian dollar would be, the forward rate is expected to be 1.1249 against the USD. Now, if you look at these two numbers, you may observe some relationship. If you look at these two numbers, you will see some relationship. So the current rate is 0.1239. The future rate is expected to be 1.249. So some depreciation trend is observed in the currency in 3 months time. So in other words, compared to the current spot rate, the forward rate is expected to be little higher. So likewise, when you have the numbers given for interest rates between two currencies, and either the spot rate or the forward rate, you can derive the respective other rate, which means if you are given the spot rate, you can derive the future rate. So this forward rate. If you are given the forward rate, you can derive the spot rate, current spot rate. Only thing, you have to have interest rates given and the time factor given. So up to now in your exam, we haven't seen questions related to this formula, right? We haven't seen, calculations related to this formula, which means this type of calculation we have not observed up to now. But it doesn't mean, or it does not guarantee that there may not be any questions in the future. So we have to be ready in terms of the possible questions. Okay, and in your paper, most of the time what we observe is questions related to the forward premiums and discounts. Forward premiums and discounts. Now, very simply, the difference between the forward rate and the spot rate today is known as swap points, right? In the market, that is the term we use. Whether there is a difference between the forward rate and the spot rate, you consider it as a swap point. Now, if this difference is positive, which means forward rate F minus spot rate minus S, F minus S is positive, we call it as a forward premium. Forward premium. So for example, here in this case, what do we have? 1.1249 is the forward, spot rate is 1.1239. So the difference, if you take between F and S, it's positive. So it's a premium. So which means it's going to be higher in the future. If this difference is negative, it is called as a forward discount. Right? It is called as a forward discount. Now, a currency with lower interest rate will trade at a forward premium in relation to the currency with a higher interest rate. So in this case, what you will see, the US dollar typically trades at a forward premium against the US dollar. Now, if you look at this part, now here from this level to this level, currency is basically depreciated in terms of Canadian dollars, right? So in other words, the US dollar has strengthened. So US dollar is having a low interest and it has strengthened. So according to this discussion, a dollar typically is trading with a forward premium and it is having a lower interest rate compared to the Canadian dollar. And Canadian dollar is trading at a forward discount against the US dollar. So to simplify, I can make this statement: if R is greater than RF, I'll repeat, if RD means domestic currency interest rate, is greater than RF, that is foreign currency interest rate, the foreign currency will be at a forward premium. So in our case, if the Canadian dollar interest rate is higher than US dollar interest rate, the US dollar is trading at a premium. On the other hand, if Canadian dollar interest rate is lower than the US dollar interest rate, then the foreign currency will be trading at a discount. Okay. So that difference, whether it is positive or negative, is dependent on the difference between the future forward rate or the forward rate and the current spot rate, F minus S. Now, here I have some questions from the past papers on this forward premium calculation. So I told you we haven't seen questions in relation to the forward exchange rate calculation, but premium discount calculation is there in the paper. So I have a couple of questions here. So this is Survey of Financial System paper, March 2017. The question is, this is I think sub question in question one of the compulsory part of the paper. So as you are aware, the first question of the paper is compulsory. So this calculation is compulsory. So what is the question? If the spot US dollar LKR rate is 150 and 3-month forward is 2%, what is the 3-month forward LKR USD rate? So here you are given the premium and you are given the premium. Based on the premium, you can calculate the forward rate. So it's not directly applying this formula based on interest rates. So through these interest rates, you get this premium. Now the premium is given. So when the premium is given, how do you calculate the rate? So the premium equals, premium is 2%, FP means the forward rate, F minus the spot rate 150S divided by the spot rate, which means spot rate 150, okay, current rate. So F minus S divided by S, very simply the what is equivalent to this premium coming from the time convention. I told you have to consider the time convention here. It's given as 3 months. So 3 months means simply if you take it as in the 3 months as 12 divided by 3, then it equals to 4. This part equals to 4. So you solve this part, this multiplied by this part, and this is the answer, 150.75. So probably you can do some calculations. So in the board, I'll make it very simple. I think this is a bit confusing. So the forward premium equals F minus S divided by S multiplied by So T is basically the time convention multiplied by 100. Okay. So if the current exchange rate is 150, if there is a premium in the market, what you can expect? If this is 150 right now, the spot rate, if there is a premium, 2% premium, what you can expect naturally, this rate should be higher than this. Okay, the future rate should be higher than the spot rate. So definitely this rate should be 150 plus. So in our answer, we have got 150.75. This 0.75 indicates this 2% premium. Now, how do we get this premium? It's not clear here. It's coming from the interest differentials. Okay. I hope it's clear. Let's move to the next question. It's very similar. This September 2018 paper. If the spot LKR USD rate is 160 and the 3-month forward rate is 161, what is the 3-month forward premium? So 3-month forward premium, now you have to calculate. So in this formula, this part now you have to calculate premium. Right? So premium equals, how do you get? Future rate minus spot rate into time factor. Now here in this answer, I have directly copied from the marking scheme. I think there is a mistake. What is the mistake here? Here it should be 100. I think 61 minus 160. So you may have to make it a correction there. So here the forward rate is 161. It should be 161 here. And the spot rate is 160. This should be 160 divided by 160. So please do that correction. This should be 161. This should be 160. This should be 160. Multiplied by the time factor into 100. So the premium would be 2.48 or 2.5. If you calculate 2.5, you get marks. Now again, you can see, since currency is at a premium, the forward rate is higher than the spot rate. The spot rate is 160. Forward rate is 161. Next question. That's from March 2019, last year. If the spot LKR rate is 179, 1 month forward rate is 180, what is the annualized 1 month forward premium? So in this case, 1 month forward premium you have to consider. Everything is the same. F minus S divided by S multiplied by, now the time factor becomes 12 divided by 1 because it is 1 month. Okay? Into 100. So you solve this, you get 6.70. Then the very latest paper is the September 2019 paper. A similar question. If the spot rate is 176, 3-month forward rate is 177, what is the annualized 3-month forward premium? So again, you have to calculate 3-month forward premium. So spot rate is given 176, forward rate is given 177. So F minus S divided by S multiplied by the time factor into 100. So you get 2.27 or 2.3. So the relationship is very clear. When there is in your answer, when your answer says that you have to calculate the premium, your answer naturally would be if the market is at a premium, your answer naturally will get a depreciated exchange rate, which means if your current spot rate is 150 and you are said that there will be a premium, so the forward rate should be definitely 150 plus. Okay, so keep that in mind and do some practice for these past paper questions, and you have to be very familiar with the forward exchange rate, because this is one of the important rates used in the financial markets, especially in the foreign exchange market. And when people enter into contracts, foreign exchange contracts, for example, exporters, importers, they consider this forward rate because they want to reduce their exchange risk, market risk, and as a result, this is an important rate. And I already mentioned to you, that is a kind of a predictor of the future spot rate based on the interest rate differentials, right? So I wanted to make it very clear. That's why I did some separate slides on this, and I am very confident that you get the idea clearly. So with that, we have completed this foreign exchange market very clearly. See here, I have given you the definitions. The forward premium is a situation in which the forward or expected future price for currency is greater than the spot price. So which means swap points are positive. Swap points are positive. Then let's move to some other markets very quickly or briefly. What are the markets that we look at compared in addition to these? There are commodity markets. Now, why commodity markets are important for financial markets is a question you might ask. Commodity market means, if you look at the definition, commodity market is a market that trades primary goods, not the manufactured goods. So primary goods, basically raw materials. So what are these raw materials? There are soft commodities like agricultural products like wheat, coffee, cocoa, sugar. All these are used as raw materials in the production manufacturing process, soft commodities. There are hard commodities like gold, rubber, oil, other metals. So these are hard commodities. Those are also used as raw materials inputs in the production process. So likewise, there are more than 50 major commodities traded in the markets, and in this commodity markets you would see what are these markets: market for precious metals, base metals, energy, agriculture. Likewise, there are various markets. Now, why these commodity markets are important for us? These commodity markets are considered as commodities with exchanges. So these commodities are traded on exchanges. Remember, we talk about exchanges where buyers and sellers meet and do transactions in a formalized setup. Okay, and in those exchanges, financial transactions matter, right? So in the exchanges, people do transactions based on future contracts or derivatives based on these commodities. Now you can consider oil as a basic commodity, hard commodity, and based on the oil price movements, you can enter into a financial contract that we call as a derivative or a future contract. So you think the oil prices going to change in the future, prices going to go up. So you enter into a forward contract to secure the price at current levels. So financial transactions are very much important in these commodity markets. So that's why we have to have some idea about the commodity markets, because investments are related to the commodities. And then we have what we have discussed up to now, basically formal financial markets. All these capital markets, money markets, foreign exchange markets, commodity markets, everything, you can consider them as formal financial markets. Now, in the financial system, there are informal financial markets as well, or informal financial sector players are there. So what is the significance or the importance of this informal sector? Informal means they are not regulated by major regulators. They are not into the main financial business, and they are not large enough. Informal financial sector in modern world, in most countries, there is a sizable sector, but it's not that large to impact the formal sector. Okay, so what is the role of this informal financial sector? They are providing savings and credit facilities to small players like farmers in the rural area, low income households, SMEs, small scale enterprises, micro, small and medium enterprises like MSMEs. You can call them as SMEs or MSMEs. For them, they don't have better access to the formal financial sector. For example, a farmer who wants to have money, finance for his farming activity, does not have access to the formal financial sector, for example. Now, let's say he wants to have a loan to cultivate 1 acre of paddy. He needs money. Now, usually what happens, being low income agriculture sector people, they are unable to borrow from a bank. Why? Banks are usually requesting them to, be good customers for some years, and banks would need some documentation, especially collateral would be needed. They would need to have some security. So therefore, the credit worthiness sometimes will be a problem for these small people, and as a result, what will happen, they are unable to access the formal financial system. Then they are served by these informal financial sector providers. Now, who are these informal financial sector? Basically, probably you may have observed at village levels, there are informal money lenders. And there are, some financial mechanisms like cheat-twos. Cheat-twos means, like, you call it in single seed too, right? People get together and, put some lots, and, according to the lots, you get a, collection of money. I hope you have some idea about these products. Those are the methods of borrowing in the uh, informal sector, and there are another way of facilities in the informal sector. Day loans means you give money in the morning, lend, getting money back in the afternoon with the interest, especially in the markets. For example, in the Manning market, in Negombo fish market, Palligoda fish market in Sri Lanka, we have this day loan market, which means there are high net worth individuals. They are having enough money. They lend in this market for needy people who are in a dire need of having funds for their activities on a daily basis. So this is informal financial sector. Why this is significant? As I said, that provides access to credit for underserved or unprivileged segment in the society. So if you look at the attributes, their access to credit is very simple. Transaction costs are basically low. When you enter into a transaction, the cost is low. No documentation, credit appraisals and all that. So the transaction cost is low, but funding cost could be higher. Funding cost could be higher means the interest charged by this informal financial sector is pretty high. on a day loan. If you take a day loan, let's say you are giving a loan to a person, you give 1 million, let's say 100,000 in the morning, and you charge 10% for 100,000. So in the evening, you get 110,000. Can you imagine the annualized interest rate? If you multiply it by 360, how much? This is a big amount. Okay. So the interest is very high in this market, but repayments rates are very high. In the informal market, you can't borrow again if you default. And if you default, you face some adverse consequences. For example, informal money lenders, polymudalalis, they will seize your properties, your real assets, Gewal Dorwal, Harkaban. If you Ukaskalla, if you take loans, if you default, the cost is really high. So you can look at some pros and cons of informal financial system. Advantages are low interest, low transaction cost, as I said. Default risk is minimum. Very transparent procedures, right? You will simply get a word. He will say yes or no, and he will give you the reasons also. Disadvantages, interest rates are not unanimous. There are a wide range of interest. For example, 5 people might get, same amount, but at 5 interest rates. There's no common benchmark or a clarity on the interest rate. Rates are higher, obviously, as I said, and it is an unregulated market. So in this market, no one is, there to look after you. No one is to regulate or supervise. But as I said, that is providing a good service to the society for underserved people. Authorities, regulators are trying to formalize these segments. They are trying to bring them into the formal sector, because there are some concerns. People would say the poor people are exploited by these informal financial markets. So poor people, they will get more hurt by the financial. For example, in Sri Lanka, we understand in north and eastern part of the country, those people are, after the war, a lot of people, they started borrowing for activities. Mostly people got poor because of the war and the effect of the war, long war. So they are not having good collaterals. Maybe they are borrowing from informal markets to get out from poverty. But what really has happened, they have gone into more poverty because they have become highly indebted people because of this informal financial sector borrowing. So that is one of the concerns of Sri Lanka. And also in with regard to informal financial market, this informal money lending business, there are some concerns, as we have recently seen, and one of the unfortunate incident in this leasing business. So it is unregulated, means sometimes there is no safety for the customers. So authorities are looking at putting some frameworks into these informal financial markets. So I hope you have heard Sri Lanka is working on a credit regulatory act, which means to formalize or regularize this lending business in Sri Lanka. So these are some additional thoughts. Now let's look at some international financial markets. International financial markets you can divide into two broad areas: international bond markets and international stock markets. International bond markets, there are three types of bond markets. One is foreign bond market. These are traditional instruments in the international bond markets. So what are the foreign bonds? They are sold and denominated in foreign currency, foreign bonds. So if it is a foreign bond, US, traded in international market. It could be a USD denominated bond, sterling denominated bond, likewise, but it cannot be LKR denominated bond because these are not strong currencies. So in foreign bonds, mostly you use reserve currencies to price it, or denomination is from reserve high currencies, the well accepted currencies. So that is one type of market, traditional markets. And there is a market called Euro bond market. Euro bond market, how do you define? A bond denominated in a currency other than of the currency in which it is sold. Here it should be other than, right? There is a correction. Euro bond is a bond denominated in a currency other than of the currency in which it is sold. It's a recent innovation. Now, for example, let's say Sri Lanka is selling bonds in international markets. Now, let's say Sri Lankan currency is rupee, but we are selling bonds in, let's say, in Singapore in dollars, in UK market in dollars. So our currency is rupees, but we denominate that currency in foreign currency, a dollar, maybe dollar mostly. So you call them as a Euro bond. Sometimes we use the term sovereign bonds, international sovereign bonds, ISBs. So ISB is a Euro bond. Why? ISB is issued by a sovereign government, but not from its own currency. From a foreign currency, using a foreign currency, it is issued in a market. Okay. And there is another market called Euro currency market. Euro currency market, those are basically foreign currencies deposited in banks outside the home currency, home country. Now let's say Sri Lankan government or Sri Lankan investors, they have deposited money outside the country in banks in foreign currency. You call them as Euro currency. This originated from actually US investors. They started depositing money in London banks. You call them as in the European market, especially during the height of the friction between USA and Russia, Cold War period. So during the Cold War period, people were basically skeptical. They were scared of whether Russia will invade USA, then they will cancel out all money, or they will seize. So investors got panicked. So they started depositing their US dollar in Euro countries, especially in the London market. So those became as Euro dollars, US dollars deposited in foreign banks outside the US. So these are the important type of international markets in the bond market: the foreign bond market, Euro bond market. Euro currency market is actually not a kind of a bond market, but that is also a variant of the Euro bond. That's why we have put it under bond markets. Then we have stock markets, international stock markets. Why there are international stock markets? Because companies, especially multinational companies, they raise capital in global equity markets. Equity means the stock markets. Until recently, the US was the most largest or the most significant stock market in the world. And a lot of multinationals, they were, part of the US stock market. But during last 2-3 decades, what we have observed, Asian stock markets have become important. They have grown significantly. So if you look at this chart, we have 10 largest global IPO markets. IPO markets means initial public offerings. So you can see initial public offerings and in which market you will see the most. That is a good indicator. So if you look at the IPOs, most of the IPOs done in Hong Kong, Shanghai, Shenzhen, etc. Which means those are Asian markets. Hong Kong is in Hong Kong. Shanghai means in China. So if you look at the Asian markets have become much more important. Out of the first 5, 3 of the IPOs are mainly from the Asian markets. And other markets, the Western markets, Nasdaq means basically USA market, New York USA market, London, Frankfurt means the European market, Stockholm means Scandinavian market. Likewise, the Western countries also in this list. But if you look at the top performers, basically the Asian markets. So this is S&P 500 chart, which is one of the key global stock indices in the world. You gauge the stock index to look at the performance in the stock market. Now, if you look at this the line, you will see during 2019-20 period, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And if you expand this chart into, let's say, 2008-9 period, you will see large drops in the S&P 500 index, indicating a collapse in the global stock market. But overall, if you look at the stock market is on an upward trend, indicating a continuous expansion in the stock markets. Now let's look at the financial markets in Sri Lanka very briefly. Now our financial market, you know, the formal market structures we start discussing with the gaining of independence, basically from 1950s. Even before that, we had a financial market, banking market, credit market at various levels, and governments and policymakers, they were basically, you know, trying to develop this market. But especially after the independence, establishment of the central bank, establishment of the state commercial banks, and the performance of the expansion of the stock market, with these we have seen some gradual development in the financial market in Sri Lanka. But most notable expansion in the financial market we can observe in the last 30 years or so. Recent 3 decades, we can observe, in those 3 decades, we can observe a fair kind of an expansion in the financial market. To support it, most regulatory, institutional, trading activities, payment and settlement activities have been provided, and they are, you know, fairly developed. Compared to a developed country, we are not so developed, but compared to a middle or lower income country, we are actually at some reasonably developed stage in terms of financial infrastructure. But there are some weak areas in terms of institutional qualities and all that. But I would say, compared to some other countries, we are at a kind of a moderate level. Many components of the financial system are there, like we have in these key sub markets. So we have a money market, forex market, government securities market, private debt security market, and the equity market. Those are the main markets in Sri Lanka. If you look at our financial market, the basic classification key markets are the money, foreign exchange, government securities, private debt, and the equity market. So the equity market is simply, you can call it the capital market also in a broader terms. Now, what we have observed, we need to expand, we need to develop our financial system further. A lot of issues, problems, weaknesses are there. So we need to have some structural changes and reforms. Reforms means some, you know, policy changes to establish a well-functioning financial system. there are very weak areas in terms of competition, in terms of the role of some of the financial sector participants, the role of the private debt players market. There are some concern areas, so we need to develop or expand these markets. Let's look at these markets very quickly. If you talk about the money market is simply facilitating the liquidity management of the economy. Liquidity management means short-term money. Short-term money is traded. So in Sri Lanka, the money market is basically driven or dominated by the interbank whole money market. If you look at the numbers in this chart in the market, if you look at the coal money volume, they are higher than the repo. Repo means another type of market activity. So they are greater than the repo market, which means the coal market is dominating. So on a day-to-day basis, participants are borrowing in the coal market or the repo market. Both are under money market for their liquidity management. So in that sense, this market is dependent on the liquidity levels. So when the market is highly liquid, which means you have more money in the system, the market is sensitive to that liquidity level. For example, if you have high liquidity levels, more money in the system on a particular day, there could be a tendency interest rates to come down. And also, if you have dried liquidity, or which means no money in the market, short-term interest rate could respond to go up. So which means they are very sensitive to liquidity levels. And another important factor in Sri Lanka, the monetary policy is basically first reflected in this money market. So when the central bank changes policy rates, those are clearly reflected in central bank rates, as I have given here under open market operations. At the same time, you will see the changes in the money market, the coal money market, right? So if you look at these rate comparison, we have interest rates, you will see those central bank rates are very closer to these market rates, which means the market is very responsive to the central bank actions and the monetary policy changes. So here we have money market transaction summary and the open market operations of the central bank. Open market means the central bank actions. If you look at this part of the table, those are entirely the market related activities. Okay. Foreign exchange market, I think we have some idea what the market is, and it is where the people or the dealers trade currency. Especially banks are dealing currency in this market. And I told you last week how the currency bought and sold in this market. Currency is basically supplied by the exporters and currency suppliers. Likewise, currency is demanded by importers and the government for their activities. So the interaction between these two currency suppliers and the people who are demanding, interaction with those two parties, the exchange rate is determined, and the foreign exchange market is basically reflecting the direction of the foreign exchange rate. So there are some particular days that the market is dry and there is a pressure on the exchange rate, and there are some days you see currency market is flooded with foreign exchange when foreign exchange comes from the outside. So in those days, foreign exchange rate tends to appreciate. Now this foreign exchange market is related to net open positions of commercial banks. Net open positions means on a day-to-day basis, the commercial bank, they are the main players, they maintain a position plus or a negative position in the balance sheet, their foreign currency assets. So very crude definition for this net open position means the definition difference between their foreign currency assets and foreign currency liabilities. Now, when foreign currency assets and liabilities difference is positive, you can call it positive net open position. That indicates banks are having enough currency. So there is no pressure on the exchange rate. There are some days banks are having negative net open positions, which means foreign currency liabilities are higher than the assets. So which means they don't have foreign currency. So in those days, there could be some pressure on the exchange rate. So that is related to the bank's foreign currency transactions, day-to-day transaction. Net open position will reflect that, and that is related to the exchange rate movements. And in Sri Lanka, you know, the rate is basically determined in the market, but the central banks time to time it involves or intervenes in the market to stabilize and to avoid the volatility in the market. In some days you see large fluctuations in the foreign exchange rate. So in those days, central bank might intervene by way of supplying or absorbing foreign exchange. So in this special cage, I have put main functions of the foreign exchange market: converting one currency to another currency, helping to minimize the risk arising in the exchange market. And also, what are the facilities in the foreign exchange market? They are funding importers. They are helping to convert export proceeds. Importers and exporters are the main players, as I say. They are supporting other foreign currency transactions in the foreign exchange market. Government securities market in Sri Lanka, there is a primary market and a secondary market. In the primary market, the government funding need is raised by the central bank. So in the primary market, only primary dealers and the central bank is involved, and the EPF. So in the primary market, central bank is selling treasury bills or bonds. The primary dealers and the EPF, they can buy these bonds bills in the primary market. In the secondary market, investors can buy or sell securities. So what you have purchased in the primary market as dealers, you can sell it in the secondary market, or investors in the secondary market, they can sell among themselves, right? So you can basically buy and sell in this market. So mainly treasury bonds are used in the secondary market for their transactions. And also we have Sri Lanka development bonds. That is also one type of bonds we use, but there is no active secondary market for those development bonds. So as a result, development bonds you only purchase in the primary market and you keep it. That is a foreign currency denominated security. I'll be discussing or defining those bonds in the next session, but for the time being, just keep that in mind. Government securities market in Sri Lanka is open for foreigners. Earlier it was 10% of the total stock. Now this has been reduced to 5%. So change this to 5%. Out of the total government debt portfolio, I think it is closer to 8 or 9 trillion rupees. Out of that, only 5% worth of T-bills and T-bonds can be purchased by the foreigners. So foreign investors, there are large companies like, you know, Merrill Lynch, Templeton. Likewise, you know, there are foreign investor companies or foreign governments. They can buy our government securities. In the government securities market, the yield rates are very important. Yield rates, this is the interest rate in the government securities market. So in short-term market, we observe 91 day, 182, 364 day. These are primary yield rates, which means at the auction, you will see these interest rates are determined. There are some, disjoints in this chart, which means in some cases, those rates are not offered or not accepted by the central bank, which means when at the auction, at some cases, from all maturities, you might not accept, you might reject some of the bids. So in that case, there won't be any data points for those areas, but still you can see the trend. And then yield curve. This is also one of the important instruments. I hope you remember we discussed. It is reflecting the direction of the interest rate and the market expectations. So this is our yield curve for by end of last year. So what is the expectation? The people think, or the investor think, in the longer run, 15 years period, interest rate would be higher, but in the short term, interest rates would be lower. So that is the expectation. Direction of interest rate, earlier yield curve red line was higher, but by end 2019, the blue line is lower, which means interest rates have come down. So yield curve is an indication of the direction of interest rate. So we monitor in Sri Lanka by the investors, the central bank and all. Then we have the corporate debt market. Corporate debt market means the private debt market. This is government debt market. This is private debt market. Private debt market is very small in Sri Lanka. Actually, it is very early stage, developing stage. If you look at these numbers, I have only numbers up to 2015. Corporate debt market capitalization is very small. It's less than 2% of GDP. Right? It's a very small amount. So although it's an alternative source of funding, the private debt instruments, that market is not developed in Sri Lanka to a great extent. But there are instruments, commercial papers, corporate debentures, you can trade in this market. And these instruments can be, or especially debentures, can be listed in the stock exchange. So whenever you issue corporate debt, actually it has to be listed debentures through through the stock exchange. So those listings are giving some, some recognition or some assurance to the investors that these are, worthy investments and also credit worthy instruments and companies. So that is applicable for debentures. Ratings, I think we will cover ratings in a separate session, but ratings are needed for these debenture issuances. Equity market, the stock market in Sri Lanka, we have closer to 289 companies. Actually, earlier it was closer to 300. Now we have roughly 289 companies across 20 business sectors. There are sub-sectors in the equity market, 20 sub-sectors. CSE, Colombo Stock Exchange, is the main exchange in Sri Lanka. There are sub-exchanges in Matara, Anuradhapura, Kandy, but mainly Colombo Stock Exchange is the main exchange. This is regulated by the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. In the stock exchange, we have two important systems. One is central depository system. I think you remember depositories we discussed. In the central depository system, all stock market transactions are recorded and reported, right? The ownerships are reported in this depository. The transaction ownership is recorded until the ownership is transferred to someone. That is also in the CDS. So this is basically a kind of a security holding system of the investors. Automated trading system means earlier the stock market transactions were done on auction basis by manually. So people were having some manual intervention, auctions done manually. So the auction prices, the amounts, all those things done manually. So people had to follow a system called outcry system, open outcry system, which means you shout prices, buying prices, selling prices and all that. But later on, this was automated. Now it's an automated system. You enter prices automatic prices entered into the system, and prices entered by the buyers of the securities, sellers of the securities. The transactions get matched automatically in this ATS, automated trading system. I hope you may have seen the stock exchange. There are large number of LED panels with prices and changing prices, transactions, all that. That is actually the ATS, automated trading system. Market capitalization is the total value of the market. So this is calculated multiplying the active stocks by its stock price. So right now in Sri Lanka's market capitalization is closer to around 2.4 trillion by June. So 2.4 trillion. So it's a large amount compared to Sri Lankan context. But if you look at some other countries, this is a very small stock market. So here we have the largest companies in Sri Lanka. If you look at roughly 4 companies or 5 companies accounts for 1/4 of the stock market in Sri Lanka, which means CTC, John Keells, Dialog Commercial Bank, distilleries companies. These 5 companies accounts for more than 20% of the stock exchange. So those are the largest companies in Sri Lanka in the stock exchange, trading in the stock market. Now in the stock market, there are some important indices that we need to consider. One is the All Share Price Index. All Share Price Index is a market capitalization weighted index. So this index is computed by giving weights to each companies based on their market capitalization, their size basically. And you multiply the market capitalization, the relative share by the share price, and you on a daily basis the stock exchange calculates this ASPI. So ASPI is simply giving the direction of the total market. So in Sri Lanka, ASPI is calculated for all shares in aggregate form and for selected areas, the sectoral index. So in the aggregate index, you take a base year, and based on that base year, you calculate an index for all the shares. Now in this chart, you will see the movements of the ASPI. So when ASPI is going up, that indicates stock market is going up, prices are picking. When going down, stock market is going down, which means prices are dropping. So in recently, we have seen during the Corona period, stock market dropped. Now it is basically picking up. The ASPI direction gives us some idea. Right now, roughly, ASPI is around 5,300 overall. That is the main index. Now, this is very similar to, as I said in the previous case, there are some indices like S&P, NASDAQ. Those are overall indices. So likewise, this is overall index in Sri Lanka, ASPI. And there's another index called S&P Sri Lanka 20 index. S&P 20 means that covers 20 largest and most liquid stocks. Now here we have presented 10. So if you expand this list into 20 companies, so based on those 20 companies, you compute a stock index that indicates the most valuable and liquid means tradable stock indices. So you can see how the market's dynamic is. So whether the market is very active, who are the main players, who's basically driving the market, whether it is the largest companies or the smallest companies, or whether it is liquid ones. So likewise, you can get some idea by looking at these S&P Sri Lanka index and the All Share Price Index. And I already mentioned to you, there are sectoral indices in Sri Lanka. There are 20 subsectors in the stock market. 289 companies are divided among these 20 sectors. So we have banking sector, beverage sector, construction sector, diversified sector, hotel, likewise. So these 20 sectors will have 20 indices. Now, what is the importance of this? These 20 indices are important for us to see the performance of each and every subsector. Now, we want to see whether the hotel sector is doing well. We want to see whether the power sector is good or not. To get some idea, these subsectors, their sectoral indices are helpful. Okay? So these are the key indicators of the stock market. And there are other, some kind of a technical indices. We are not monitoring these on daily basis, but investors, they look at these indices. So there are three major indices likewise. One is the total return index, TRI. TRI is calculated daily in addition to price indices. It reflects returns due to both price changes and dividend. Now we know stocks are earning two types of incomes. Returns, which means the difference between the yesterday and today price, that is return, and the dividend. Dividend means the distributed profit. Now if you take these dividends and returns together, based on that you can calculate an index to see whether a particular share is giving a good earning, whether you can be reinvested in this share, in whether the share is an investable one, right? That is an important thing. For particular shares, you can calculate a return index, and also for the total market, you can have a total return index. So the total return index will give us an idea whether on aggregate basis, the stock market is profitable or not. Now, if you look at this chart, there are some good periods. The TRI is going up, and there are some bad periods, TRI is going down, which means profitability, the total return is going down. In some periods, total return is going up. So this measure is giving an idea for us to look at the stock market in terms of returns due to price changes and dividends. And there are two other indicators: price earning ratio. It is ratio for valuing the companies. Now, this is for the overall market. PE ratio is important when you value company. When you value a company, you need to see whether a particular company is good or bad in terms of earnings. So you can calculate PE ratio, which means market value per share, the market price, divided by earnings per share. Earnings means what is the return of the share, and this earnings that is giving some idea about the company's earnings of a particular share. Whether it is a good investment or a bad investment, you can get some idea. In valuing the company, you use it. How do you calculate? Market value divided by earnings per share. Earnings per share. Okay. And then we have another ratio called dividend yield, or you call this actually here P divided by, it's correct. Here it should be D divided by P, right? Here you have a mistake. Please make it a correction. Dividend yield, D divided by P. So dividend yield is expressed as a kind of a dividend outcome of a share. What is the level of dividend you get out of a share? So here dividend is expressed as a percentage of the current share price. So how do you calculate? You divide the dividend by the current share price. So it indicates how much a company pays out. Pays out means what is the distributable profit of a company in terms of dividend each year relative to its share price. Okay, so these are some company wise indicators, very important indicators to see whether a particular company is doing well, whether it is a good investment or a attractive one. So I went through these things pretty fast because I plan to have some kind of a in our revision session or in our uh, past paper discussion, where we try to get some time slot. In that session I'll be doing some calculations, some short answer questions, but here we basically look at the definition, so keep that in mind. So ultimately you have some questions related to the past papers. Now in these papers you will see some conceptual questions questions related to conceptual issues, definitions, and also some calculations on exchange rates and all that, something on a stock exchange, uh, and some definitions on some instruments. That part, as I said, we will be covering in the next session. And also some of the definitions like central depository, Fed funds rate, what is the current rate, uh, and also there are some questions related to some scenarios. Scenarios means you are given some cases you have to think of and give an answer. For example, an investor would have these type of alternative avenues. What would you recommend for him? Likewise, there are some questions. So we will come back to those questions later. I'll leave you these questions for you to look at some on your own answers from your uh, self study. Try to answer some of these questions, but later we will try to find a time to discuss. Okay, so with that, it's a bit lengthier discussion. I think we spent something like 3 weeks to get some understanding about the financial markets. So we have a thorough understanding about the financial markets, sub-markets, the Sri Lankan markets and all that. In the next session, very quickly, we will be looking at the instruments traded in this market. I have already discussed some of the instruments in this session also, but I'll repeat those instruments in the next session for you to get some, thorough understanding about the securities or the products that we use in these markets. And thereafter, we'll try to do some exercises to get some more understanding. And then gradually we are moving to the last part of our discussion in this course. Basically, we are left with 2 major sessions, mainly payment instruments, the settlement instruments, and the financial safety nets. So I think within 3-4 weeks time, we will be basically done. And then we will look for some revision in terms of the before the exam, in terms of the materials that we have already covered. Okay, so I'll stop at this point, and I hope you will spend some time on these slides to absorb them, listen to the video very carefully. Probably there could be some areas which are not very clear. In that case, I always recommend you to look at the recommended readings, our chapter 8 of the annual report of the central bank, Survey of Financial System textbook written by Mrs. Samarasiri. There also you can get some idea, plus past papers, you will get some idea. Okay, so I'll stop at this point, and I'll see you next week at our usual time. Okay, thank you.